Hi, my name is Troy Parfit, and I'd like to welcome you to Beyond Order, Jordan Peterson, Crypto-fascism, and the Occult, part 2 of a series in which I will explain, or try to, mostly through an analysis of Jordan Peterson's newest book, how the world's most recognized clinical psychologist is a crypto-fascist and an occultist. In Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life, each rule is prefaced by an image. This is the image for Rule 1. It looks innocuous enough. A whimsical picture of a man about to step over the edge of a cliff. It's called The Fool, and, as Peterson explains in Beyond Order, it was adapted from a Rider-Waite tarot card called The Fool. However, Peterson failed to mention that it's actually an occultic tarot card, just as he omitted information about the identity of the person who conceptualized the card and commissioned a designer to produce it in the year 1909. That person was Arthur Edward Waite, 1857 to 1942, often called A.E. Waite. A.E. Waite was a well-known Freemason and occultist. He wrote books on alchemy, Kabbalah, black magic, Rosicrucianism, and devil worship. He studied the dark arts while a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, where he had an acrimonious relationship with a colleague who the British press would brand the world's wickedest man, and who would become history's best-known Satanist, Aleister Crowley, 1875 to 1947. Crowley wrote about Waite several times, even basing a character on him in a novel called Moonchild. Crowley hated Waite and referred to him in writing as Dead Waite and a Fool, which is interesting given that one of Waite's tarot cards was The Fool. When Crowley developed his own tarot deck, known as the Thoth Tarot Deck, which was published posthumously in 1969, he copied cards from Waite's tarot deck, including the Fool. Crowley plundered the Rider-Waite deck, perhaps out of spite, envy, malevolence, or some combination thereof. Here's an image of the three fools, as it were. In the middle, we see Waite's Fool, the original Rider-Waite card. Do you see the butterfly in this image? No? That's because there isn't one. Now, on the left, we see Peterson's Fool, taken from Waite's Fool. Please note the butterfly. On the right, we see Crowley's Fool, taken from Waite's Fool. Do you see the butterfly? It's to the left of the Fool and under his arm. Just in case you didn't spot it, here's another image of Aleister Crowley's Fool. The butterfly is within the red circle. If you're thinking it's a dragonfly, it isn't. Here's an image from someone who is presumably an adherent of Aleister Crowley, with elements of the card labeled, and that particular element labeled as butterfly, just to be clear. You will understand the ramifications. Jordan Peterson and Aleister Crowley reproduced the same occultic tarot card, which was originally conceptualized by an occultist who was into devil worship. Moreover, the presence of the butterfly in Jordan Peterson's card suggests that Peterson was also recreating the Aleister Crowley card. Here's some evidence to support that proposal. In Crowley's book, The Master Therion, he writes, "The Fool of the Tarot. In the common interpretation of the card, the scholiasts say that the picture is of a gay, careless youth with a sack full of follies and illusions dancing along the edge of a precipice." And in Beyond Order, Peterson writes, "The Fool is a positive card. The Fool is a young, handsome man, eyes lifted upward, journeying into the mountains, sun shining brightly upon him, about to carelessly step over a cliff." So again, in Crowley's occultic tarot card, the Fool is a gay, careless youth dancing along the edge of a precipice. And in Peterson's occultic tarot card image, based on an occultic tarot card copied by Crowley, the Fool is a young, handsome man about to carelessly step over a cliff. There's a term for this sort of contextual and linguistic overlap. It's called plagiarism. Here's more Crowley plagiarism from Jordan Peterson's Beyond Order. Crowley: "Blake was right in saying, 'The lust of the goat is the bounty of God.'" Peterson, quoting William Blake: "The lust of the goat is the bounty of God." Crowley: "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani." Peterson: "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani." Crowley: "The big lion, who must certainly be Satan himself." Peterson: "Voldemort, who might as well be Satan himself." Crowley: "Now I, the god, have choked her god in dung and bred the basilisk." reared the fiend Satan to burn in hell with me. Peterson, Voldemort therefore bears the same relationship to the basilisk in Hogwarts as Satan does. Crowley, this picture represents the tree of life, which is a map of the universe. Peterson, such trees therefore symbolize the tree of life, which serves as the very foundation of the cosmos. Crowley is talking about the Kabbalistic tree of life, not the one in Genesis. So is Peterson. In Christianity, the tree of life is not the foundation of the cosmos, but in Kabbalah, the nodes, or archetypes as they are called, as seen in this image, represent celestial bodies, deities, and angels. By calling the tree of life the map of the universe and the foundation of the cosmos, Crowley and Peterson are inverting or distorting the Bible to transmit occultic messages. But to know that, you'd have to understand the occult. It would only be understood to the initiated. As I said in part 1, the word occult comes from the Latin occultus, meaning hidden or clandestine. The allure of the occult revolves around knowing something other people don't. Anyway, isn't it amazing how I discovered the 6 aforementioned examples of Peterson plagiarizing Crowley, and probably 40 more from Beyond Order, which was just released about 3 weeks ago? Why, I must be some kind of genius. Actually, I knew Peterson was going to filch from Crowley because he's been doing it for decades, under the guise of teaching mythology. Why would a clinical psychologist give lectures on mythology? What could a student of psychology learn about, say, Cluster A psychological disorders as detailed in the DSM from listening to Peterson prattle on about the all-seeing eye of Horus? The answer is nothing. He's as mad as a hatter. I just tossed the newfound examples of copying onto the pile. I now have well over 500 examples of Peterson copying Crowley. They span a remarkable array of arcane subjects and warped biblical and mythological interpretations, and are rendered in language that ranges between highly similar and identical. The chance of this being happenstance is infinitesimal. Also, for each example I just gave you, I could explain why it's plagiarism, not only from the perspective of linguistics, which I have formally studied, but in terms of providing context. For now, I'll give you some context for just one example, the quote involving William Blake. Here it is again. Crowley, Blake was right in saying, "The lust of the goat is the bounty of God." Peterson, quoting William Blake, "The lust of the goat is the bounty of God." William Blake was a mystic who was interested in the occult, for example, Kabbalah. He claimed he received poetry in a state of possession and put pen to paper via automatic writing, meaning the words wrote themselves. He was merely a conduit for some mystical force. Automatic writing was how Aleister Crowley claimed he wrote his Book of the Law, sometimes called the Thelemic Bible, after being possessed by a spirit named Aiwass, although Aiwass was just code for the devil, because in Crowley's day you couldn't list Satan as a co-author. Jordan Peterson quotes, raves about, and recommends a book by Henri Ellenberger called The Discovery of the Unconscious, which discusses occultic practices like automatic writing and experiences of satanic possession that are the result of schizophrenic delusion. William Blake was one of Aleister Crowley's chief influences. Here are some more of Crowley's influences: Dante, John Milton, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, William Wordsworth, Walt Whitman, Sir Isaac Newton, Immanuel Kant, René Descartes, Thomas Henry Huxley, Robert Burns, and, above all, Friedrich Nietzsche. What a coincidence, because these 11 men are also cited as influences by Jordan Peterson. And which one would top Jordan Peterson's list? Friedrich Nietzsche. The poetry of William Wordsworth and Walt Whitman feature esoteric themes in occult symbolism. As for Isaac Newton, although you probably know him for his laws of gravitation, or laws of motion, what you may not know about him was that he was deeply interested in the occult and wrote books about alchemy. He searched for the mythical Philosopher's Stone, or elixir for immortality, tried to decipher the Bible's secret code, and was a little too interested in the Book of Revelation. Peterson has quoted poetry from several poets who were interested in the occult, including William Blake, William Wordsworth, Walt Whitman, T.S. Eliot, and William Butler Yeats. As a tribute to Crowley, Peterson likes to cite people whose writing or poetry happens to resemble Crowley's. For example, here's Peterson citing T.S. Eliot. Into the crowned knot of fire and the rose are one. Crowley, cross upon cross of elemental fire, life circles life, the rose all flowers above. Again, T.S. Eliot was interested in the occult, and that bit of verse I just read could have been a nod to Rosicrucianism. T.S. Eliot's The Waste Land mentions the tarot and is admired by occultists. T.S. Eliot was also an anti-Semite and a fascist. So was Crowley. Just to be clear, I'm describing connections I'm quite certain Peterson sees, not ones that I would ordinarily see. I've made a study of how he thinks. I'm trying to out a fraud. I'm not the fraud. Please don't confuse Peterson with me. Don't shoot the messenger. Thank you. Peterson's favorite epic poem is Milton's Paradise Lost. Aleister Crowley's favorite epic poem was, can you guess? Milton's Paradise Lost. Peterson quotes Milton to say, "Evil, be thou my good." And Crowley quoted Milton to say, "Evil, be thou my good." When Peterson taught at Harvard, Paradise Lost was required reading. Welcome to psychology class. Today we're going to read and appreciate fawning verse about Lucifer. I kid. But in all seriousness, as Peterson twirled his fingers next to his head, as someone might to indicate insanity, he informed his learners that the Miltonian notion of Satan's rebellion in heaven, which resulted in his being flung out of heaven and cast into hell, was, quote, "a story that's always running around in my mind," end quote. He then stopped twirling his fingers and paused, seemingly embarrassed, before murmuring, for some peculiar reason, Lucifer means Lightbringer. The story of Satan's rebellion was always running around in Jordan Peterson's mind. How intriguing. Consider the following from Crowley and Peterson, and observe how the register is similar, which is to say, note the manic praise. Crowley, Milton was a great poet. Not only is Satan the hero, but the triumphant hero. Peterson, Milton's great poem was a prophecy. Milton's genius identified with Satan. Crowley, Paradise Lost allowed me to gloat over the figures of Satan and sin. Peterson, the great figure of evil, the figure of Satan. Crowley, the theory, roughly speaking, is that of Milton or Dante. Peterson, I read and perhaps even understood much of Milton's Paradise Lost, Goethe's Faust, and Dante's Inferno. Peterson says he read Milton, Goethe, and Dante to understand the reasons for the nuclear standoff of the Cold War. You can see the reasoning. I wonder what the Soviets were up to during the Khrushchev era. I know, where's my copy of the Divine Comedy? In Beyond Order, the images that precede Rule 5 and Rule 11 are Fallen Angel, which is this image, and Satan, which is this image. The Satan illustration was adapted from John Milton's Paradise Lost. Bearing in mind that I'm still providing context for the Blake quote, in which Crowley referred to a goat's lust and God's bounty, know that Crowley wrote about slaughtering goats in satanic rituals in order to invoke the spirit of a demon. Chapter 1 of Crowley's Book of Lies is entitled The Sabbath of the Goat, a reference to this drawing named the Sabbatic Goat, often called the Baphomet, an image which features in the occult. And here's another goat-themed occultic image, a goat's head within a pentagram. Jordan Peterson has told his followers that they ought to slaughter goats in backyard rituals in order to become a new man. He said it was necessary to spill its blood and make the sacrifice sufficiently bloody. When I tell people this, they don't believe me. They never ask for the source or to see the quote. Another response is derisive laughter. Ha ha. Yeah, ha ha, so funny. The world's most popular public intellectual, who is also identified as the savior, and who says he hears a voice in his head that regulates his speech, for whom the story of the devil being flung out of heaven is always running around in his mind, instructs his followers to slit goats' throats in bloody backyard rituals so as to undergo some kind of mystical transformation. Ha ha, indeed. The funniest part of this rib tickler is that it has not been reported by the media. Jordan Peterson has a real thing for goats. In fact, he shows an image of one at the beginning of nearly all his videos, just before showing a picture of the devil. Do you know what I'm talking about? At the 10-second mark in Peterson's standard video opener, in which you can hear Mozart's Symphony No. 41, he flashes this image of a goat. At the 11-second mark, he shows this image of the devil. At 12 seconds, we're treated to this picture of a Nuremberg rally. Peterson does love his Nuremberg rallies. And at 13 seconds, we see another image of Nazi soldiers goose-stepping past Hitler. A goat, the devil, Nazis. Remember, Heinrich Himmler, head of the SS, was an occultist and a Satanist. Hitler's mentor, Dietrich Eckart, was a mystic who penned poetry about Lucifer. And Hitler, who was also influenced by the occult, laced his language with references to the devil, Satan, and hell. But to give the devil his due, he didn't do it nearly as much as Peterson does. Anyway, before we go any further, I need to ask you a question. Jordan Peterson has been saying, ever since his first recorded lecture in 1996, that his courses are about one topic, one very narrow topic. Do you know what that topic is? On March 8th, 2021, a week after the publication of Beyond Order, he reformulated the claim that all his work and his 3 books are about this one very specific topic. Again, do you know what it is? It's the motivation for genocide. That is, the motivation, singular, that made possible the Holocaust. This claim, which, again, he's been making for years, raises a number of questions. If Peterson's main focus in his books, speeches, and lectures is understanding why people would participate in a systematized mass murder campaign like the Holocaust, why does he never write or talk about this except in passing? Have you ever seen a lecture or subheading in one of his books called something like Motivations for the Holocaust? Or just The Holocaust? I know you haven't, because nothing like that exists. In Beyond Order, JP writes about how amazing it is that you can remove a cat's brain and it will be hyper-exploratory. So cool. And he has quite a lot to say about how rats like to fight and wrestle with each other. Extremely useful to know. But there's nothing about, say, how the Nazis dehumanized, denaturalized, and ghettoized the Jews before shipping them off to death camps. Nothing at all. There's no discussion of the psychological disorders that Nazi leaders had, which other psychologists and psychiatrists have tried to figure out, or of shared psychotic disorder, which is almost certainly what helped fuel Nazi hysteria. Shared psychotic disorder, or in French, folie à deux, which means madness for two, happens when narcissists or psychopaths transmit their neurosis to others, which is essentially what Hitler did. His homicidal fantasies became the people's homicidal fantasies. His neurosis became their neurosis. Peterson's claim to be focused on the motivation for genocide makes about as much sense as reading books about the devil to understand the Cold War. His mission statement just doesn't add up. Here are a few more questions. Given that 2 of Peterson's books are self-help books, how could they be about the Holocaust? Self-help books about the Holocaust? That's madness. If Beyond Order is about the Holocaust, which Peterson said it was when he spoke to Brett Weinstein, who's Jewish, why does the word Holocaust not appear in the book? Why does the word Holocaust only appear 8 times in Peterson's 3 books? That's once every 180 pages. Why does Hitler's name crop up just 9 times in his 3 books? And how come one of those references appears in the following question? Granted the opportunity, how many of us would not be Hitlers? Why would a self-help book about the Holocaust that doesn't include the word Holocaust begin with the image of an occultic tarot card and feature 2 rather flattering, or at least artistic, pictures of Satan? I'll leave you to come up with answers. In part 3, I'm going to tell you about another occultic image in Beyond Order, because, you didn't just think there was one, did you? If you have 2 pictures of Lucifer in a self-help book, then obviously you need 2 pictures related to the occult. It's only reasonable. And as Peterson has said, Lucifer, in Milton's eyes, the spirit of reason, was the most wondrous angel brought forth from the void of God. Having read Paradise Lost, I see no indication that Milton believed Satan to be the spirit of reason or God's most wondrous angel. but Peterson believes it right to his core. In any case, the occultic image I'll be discussing in Part 3 is also linked to the secret society in which Arthur Edward Waite and Aleister Crowley cut their teeth as necromancers, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Thank you for listening, and bye for now.